Hey, everybody, I'm Mark Collier with the Open Infra Foundation, and I'll be joined shortly by Jonathan Bryce and Tariq Perez. Very excited to be able to participate in another Cloud Operator Days. I've been very fortunate to be able to come to Japan and join many of these events in the past. The last time was a couple of years ago, and can't wait to get back in person as soon as possible. Now, over the past 11 years, we've been on an incredible journey together. It's a multi decade journey to build open source software for cloud computing, for infrastructure. And across this time period, we have looked at many ways that we can work together to solve really hard problems. And as we look to the next decade of open infrastructure and working together, some of the areas that we think will be important to focus on are enabling new hardware architectures. There's going to be more and more open source, of course. So integrating that, testing that together, all the different ways that we will be deploying through different models from the data center to the edge. And of course, we know that many new requirements are coming in from governments around the world, including data sovereignty. And we'll be hearing about some of these use cases in just a few moments. And when it comes to hardware architectures, we know that ARM, FPGAs, GPUs, these are all really important new technologies they've been around for a while, but they're moving more and more into the data center. And that's going to be a lot of work that we can all collaborate on together to improve the software layers that enable all that hardware. And of course, we want to do it in open source. And to do that and to assist with that and bring this incredible community together from people from all over the world, earlier this year, the Openstack Foundation became the Open Infra Foundation or Open Infrastructure Foundation. And this is really important work that we're doing together. And of course, we continue to work on OpenStack, and we'll be talking a lot about OpenStack users today and the challenges they're tackling. But there are a number of other projects, communities that, as a foundation, we have helped to establish, and we're trying to grow and really help solve important problems at that infrastructure layer. And a lot of the ways that we're able to do that is supporting events like Cloud Operator Days and, of course, Open Infrastructure Summits. We are hoping to come back together for a global in person Open Infrastructure Summit next year. And we also have events like Open Infra Live, a weekly series, the project team gatherings, and of course, our Open Dev series. So, our focus at the foundation is to build communities who write software that runs in production. So we invite all of you to be active members of that community, help us write software, and help each other run it in production. And we'll, again, be excited to have Jonathan and Tari in just a moment to talk about some real world examples of operators in production. Now, this new foundation, the Open Infrastructure Foundation, is backed by companies all over the world. We have more than 60 companies that are members now. And some of the newest members are companies like Ant Group and Facebook. So these are companies that have real engineering expertise operating infrastructure at massive scale. And of course, we have companies like NEC and others from around the world that help us bring together all of these communities around the world. So quickly, since we're talking about open infra in this larger landscape that OpenStack is a part of, a quick little quiz here. So what is open infra? Is it A, a global community writing open source software for infrastructure? Is it B, infrastructure powered by open source software? Or is it C, a movement started with OpenStack and now backed by a foundation with 110,000 members in over 180 countries? Well, I'm imagining you have probably guessed by now that it is all of the above. So open infrastructure is many things. Open infra is a community. We do write software and we do run it in production. And it really is a movement that was started with OpenStack, and OpenStack continues to be at the heart of it. But there are many other layers of technology now, many things that OpenStack integrates with, communities that we support. And that's the important work we're doing. And when we say that we build communities who write software that runs in production, it's really important to emphasize production, right? We're not writing software just to make a headline or to get in social media or Twitter or to get get in the news, get hyped up, press releases. We're doing it so that it can run production clouds. And if you look across all of these software projects that are hosted by the Open Infra Foundation, there are many real-world examples. Kata Containers is run by Ant Group, and they run Alipay, the largest payment processor in the world. If you look at something like OpenStack, Walmart is almost at 1 million cores now of compute. So many of the users that started with OpenStack several years ago just continue to invest in growing that footprint. You know, Starling X is running the radio access network for Verizon, one of the largest mobile carriers in the world, for their 5G network in production right now. Volvo, major auto manufacturer, runs Zool for CI/CD. So the point here really is that every one of the projects that we support is something that the end goal is to run in production. And so when we think about the vitality and importance of open source, 99% of code bases today contain open source. So open source has won. That's the good news. But the challenging part is making it all work together, right? So open source is the way that technology is developed today. We've come a long way from 11 years ago when we started Openstack. And by the way, I wish we could be there to support to celebrate the 11th anniversary of Openstack with all of you. But as a foundation in this giant world of open source, we're not trying to host thousands of projects or do everything when it comes to open source. We are focused on the infrastructure layer. So that means like infrastructure for CI/CD, infrastructure for AI and machine learning. Of course, hybrid cloud is a huge thing today, bringing together public and private cloud, multi-cloud, and infrastructure for container native workloads. Last but not least, of course, edge computing is a massive area of growth. And our communities around the world are working very hard to build solutions. And so we're building communities who are writing software for these markets. And we know, as I said, that as there's more open source, there's more open source, more problems, right? You got a lot of challenges to integrate it all together. And so we know that the operations is really the difficult thing. And that's why we're so excited to support this event, the Cloud Operator Day. And so if we look ahead, I want to bring on Jonathan Bryce and Terry Perez to talk about some specific users and the challenges they're tackling with open source infrastructure software. All right, Terry, Jonathan, take it away.
Thanks, Mark. I think Line is a good example of what you just mentioned about the complexity of running those workloads in production and being able to leverage the community that we built around OpenStack to help them operate at scale. So Line has a massive OpenStack deployment with driving more than 67,000 virtual machines, 50,000 bare metal servers, and more than 350 Kubernetes clusters, all running on OpenStack. And they're using this programmable infrastructure to deliver their services faster to their users. And at the same time, they're participating in a lot of our discussion forums around large-scale operations. And they participate to the large-scale SIG and discussed how they scale RabbitMQ and OpenStack together so that the type of problems that they encountered, the type of metrics that they've been collecting to further operate at scale where there were limitations and bottlenecks. So it's a great example of a massive OpenStack users that is engaging upstream with the rest of the community to share problems and discuss solutions all together.
Another really great example of these kinds of production use cases is with AMD, the chip manufacturer, who has been working on a number of technologies to improve the security at the hardware level of our computers, and they have recently been working within the Kata Containers project to enable different types of secure virtualization at the hardware level. This is something that falls under the realm of confidential computing, which is something that ties in with those trends that Mark mentioned earlier, things like digital sovereignty and an increased demand for privacy and security as we move to more cloud environments, more environments that are distributed outside of data centers. And we really need to be able to verify that whatever data might be in memory or on disk or be traveling through a network is entirely secure from end to end and throughout the entire process. So, AMD working upstream to improve the security of things like containers and virtualized memory is an awesome example of how the industry is coming together to build open infrastructure that can run in production.
Another good example of the type of discussions that we've been enabling at within the large scale SIG is our shows during the Open Infra Live episodes, and we've been running one on spare capacity, where operators from various companies running OpenStack, large scale OpenStack, have come together to discuss a specific operational problem. One of them is how you handle spare capacity, and this was led by CERN, the European Research Center for Nuclear Research. It's been an OpenStack user since the very beginning of the project. It has a very large OpenStack deployment that they use to analyze the results of the science experiments that they run. And obviously they have this limitation where they need to reduce the spare capacity that they're having at the very minimum and still have all the resources necessary to run the analysis of their experiments. So how they handle spare capacity is critical, but they were joined by other operators with slightly different constraints around spare capacity, like public clouds, like City Network at the public cloud or Open Telecom Cloud, or InMotion, who are an operator of data center as a service based on OpenStack, or Verizon Media, which like Mark mentioned earlier, has a lot of 5G deployments. And so all of them had different spare capacity problems. It was great to hear from them and help them confront their opinions.
And one area that is really emerging as a new use case for open infrastructure is edge computing. And I think this is a great example of a trend that we have seen throughout OpenStack's history and the history of kind of open source infrastructure. People are using open source to really become early adopters of emerging technology, whether that's cloud computing or containers with things like Docker and Kubernetes. Within OpenStack, we had the first clouds on the planet that supported IPv6 because the community was working to build that kind of functionality into OpenStack early on. And here what we are seeing is the same kind of thing where edge computing is running in production thanks to open source software. It's helping people get there sooner and faster. And we're able to bring companies together who are running these edge environments and building these edge environments to collaborate in the open. We recently had an Open Infra Live episode with Starling X and representatives from the edge computing work group come together and talk about how to make the edge work. What is the edge? What are the edge use cases that people are seeing today, and where do we think it's going to go? And I think that those are, again, just the things that demonstrate how awesome it is to be part of open source communities where we can come together and we can work on these new technologies and take them to production sooner, and really put this stuff at scale in the real world.
Another major driver for open infrastructure today is digital sovereignty. This idea that you need to run workloads under jurisdictions that are not in the control of other countries potentially. And so that drove a lot of recent deployments of public clouds for OpenStack, especially in Europe right now, but we're seeing trends as well in Asia and South America. And this is really interesting to see how data locality can play a role in furthering the deployments of open infrastructure technologies. Obviously, you can deploy close to where the workloads is consumed, but also in legal jurisdictions that apply to your use case. So it's been very interesting to see it emerge as a major driver for OpenStack deployments recently. And finally, we are not shying away from discussing difficult points. And one of the large-scale SIG episodes was around discussing upgrading OpenStack, which has always been a pain point in operations for large-scale deployments. And so we had representatives from Blizzard, VexHost, Workday, OVH, CERN again, and they all discussed how they operate, how they do upgrades, how they manage the life cycle of their deployments. And it's been a great episode, actually 2 episodes, because we ran out of time on the first one, and we did another one to discuss actually further discuss those operational challenges. But it's a good example of how we as a community come together to help others operate that kind of technologies in production at large scale.
So all of these users have been featured on the Open Infra Live series that Mark mentioned earlier. This is a weekly series that we are doing every Thursday at 1400 UTC. And every week we have developers and users and organizations who are building this software and running it come on and talk about what they're doing, what their use cases are, and what kinds of challenges they're seeing, and then collaborate on how to move all of this forward. So this is a great show that the community has been working on now this year, and we are always looking for new ideas for episodes and guests who want to share what they're doing. You can go to openinfra.live to find out more, to see past episodes, to submit ideas for future episodes, and to join the community around Open Infra Live. So Mark, we'll turn it back over to you.
Sure.
And thanks for letting us talk about all of these great users.
Absolutely. Like I said, running in production is what it's all about, and it's also really all about participation. And so I want to just invite everybody to join the global community. If you go to openinfra.dev/join, you can learn all about how to join the foundation, join the community, join the different projects. As an individual, you can join as a member. It's free. Or if your company wants to support the foundation, you can become a member company. So openinfra.dev/join is really the most important place to go if you want to get involved, and just a good starting point for all of you who are not already members of the foundation or not already active in one of these open source communities. Participation is how we make all this stuff work. And we're on a multi-decade journey. So this is something that we are very serious about doing with people all over the world. Also coming up soon is the Open Infra Day Asia event. And you can go to 2021.openinfra.asia for more information. So please participate, please join, get involved anywhere you can, get to know the other participants here at this event. And I hope you all have a good time with Open Infra. Thank you.